Hey everybody, Aaron here for Movie Battleground. I wanted to start off the match by first putting in a sort of preamble to explain what it is you guys are about to see. So, in the build up to this match, one of the competitors tonight, Jake Riese, had been dealing with a personal health concern, and that's all I'll choose to say, that had been affecting his life in general, of course. But of course, for our silly little show, that includes the ability to prepare for this match. Now, I want to give a lot of love to Jake because he's been a huge part of this new era of Battleground. He's been one of our most consistent judges. He's always willing to give the time that he has. And in multiple instances, he's actually stepped in at the last minute to cover positions that someone had to vacate and save the show, so to speak, and make sure that a recording can go through with enough judges. Uh, However, because of his willingness to help us in tight situations, Jake has also been a part of a handful of matches that have had dreaded production issues. I'm thankful that not many of ours have, but we have had a couple, and I don't tend to make those things a secret. Sometimes matches will disappear off the schedule, or matches that were announced at a certain time will air on another date. It's not something I've made a secret. The show is, it's a moving thing. I think we all understand that not everything's going to go perfectly to plan. Um, Jake himself, a lot of people may not know this, had a match scheduled before the start of this tournament that was supposed to record back in May. And due to other circumstances unrelated to Jake, that match was actually full on canceled and he never got to play it. So again, Jake is someone who firsthand has seen when issues can go wrong within a match. It is due to this that I believe is why Jake chose not to communicate and say anything. And he instead went through with the recording of the match as we had scheduled. However, due to a lack of prep on certain questions within the match that were a little harder to prepare for and not as easy for him to come up with something for, and what he felt was a little more of a struggle to try and just ad lib something together on the spot, Jake instead chose to give the win to Alec after two questions rather than moving forward and, kind of faking it till he made it with the match, which is something that I respected, especially once I learned about the circumstances. I want to again state that I have a never ending love for Jake and everything that he's done for this new era of the show. However, this is not how I want things to go down, and I want to use this as an example for everybody who competes. Whether you are a host for me, a competitor for me, or a judge for me, if you've been a part of a recording, you may have heard me say something along these lines before. However, I can never, ever state how much I truly mean it. Real life must always come first. Uh, Prep is a huge part of the show. And it's one thing if a competitor prefers or chooses to go heavily off the cuff for something, but a number of our competitors actively prep every question that they have the chance to, and most work mostly off their prep for matches and only kind of speak freestyle in terms of what they're going to say when they're forced to if an opponent brings up a point that they hadn't already thought of. So if anyone is actively involved in a match and something comes up that heavily affects your ability to prepare outside of the normal standard of what we deal with in life, please communicate it to me. I'm not asking for the deep, dirty details. I would never want that from somebody, especially if a situation is recent. But I would want to know if something is affecting you because I never want this show to become an extra burden on someone when I instead just want it to be a fun thing you get to compete in. I don't want someone to feel like they have to go through with something because they'd already committed to it and we'd already set it up, especially if the circumstances more than call for a delay or a cancellation. To go against the long-standing saying in show business, quote unquote, which is not what this is, but to use a term everyone's heard, the show does not have to go on. With that said, in this instance, the show did go on and we did record something. And so to give both Jake and Alec their due credit for the debates they brought to the game, What you guys are about to see is a heavily edited version of this match. Following this, I will play the normal Battleground intro, and rather than doing the introductions that would normally take up the space of the video, we're instead going to just jump straight to round one. You guys will get to see every bit of the debates that was recorded for the matches before I'll cut from the post interviews, and we will close out the video a little early as well. Again, I do want to wish the best to Jake, who will be taking some time off, at least as a competitor, and more than likely for a bit as a judge from the show. And I do hope you guys enjoy what we have of the match, because to give both these guys a lot of credit, the questions that they got in the first two were both strengths that they had selected, and they certainly brought as much passion as they could to it. Thank you guys, and enjoy the show. Bring Alec in, and we'll go ahead and get into the rules of the match. Movie Battleground is a game that is a best of 5 rounds. It is a first to 3 points wins. Each round of play is worth 1 point. Should a competitor happen to get 3 points in a row, that will be a victory by knockout. If it is tied 2-2 at the end of 4 rounds, then we will go ahead and move on to the blind round, which we will worry about if we have to go there. In terms of how the regular game works, each competitor has been given questions ahead of time. They've had a chance to prep. They will get 60 seconds to start their opening, followed by 2 minutes to expand with some solo speaking time. They will get 4 minutes of open debate time, where they'll go back and forth and get in as many blows as humanly possible, followed by a 60-second closing argument, where they will each get to wrap up their argument. Following all this, I do have 3 judges backstage in the form of Sean Sandberg, Chris Diaz, and Jacob West. They will join us on screen following the debates, at which point they will deliberate on who they believe won based on the arguments. With that said, guys, do we have any questions, or are we good to go?
Let's get it.
Yep.
All right, then. So we will go ahead and get into this. I apologize, guys. Give me 1 second. For those of you at home watching, you guys will clearly notice that I am not at my usual location, because I'm recording this while on vacation. And the internet decided that it'll run the stream perfectly, but if I bring that 12-minute timer in, it will not. So I'm setting up the old bootleg timers so that I can make sure that this works. Okay, perfect. So yeah, we'll go ahead and get into question number 1. Great start. We'll go ahead and get into question number 1 here. And this is obviously, when I wrote this question a little while ago, it was before this, but now with the upload, we're coming off of a few weeks ago. We had Comic-Con, I believe a week or 2 from the point of this upload. We also have D23 happening. And so we have a shit ton of Marvel news. We now know where Phase 4 ends. We know basically the entirety of Phase 5, and we already know that Phase 6 is going to contain not 1, but 2 Avengers films releasing in less than a year and within the same calendar year. So there's a lot of big news that came out related to that. So what a better way to look forward to the future than to talk shit about the past? The question for these guys tonight is going to be, what is the worst film of Phase 2 of the Marvel Cinematic Universe? For those of you who are not aware of what Phase 2 is, the 6 films that encapsulate it are Iron Man 3, Thor: The Dark World, Captain America: The Winter Soldier, Guardians of the Galaxy, Avengers Age of Ultron, and Ant-Man. So they had to choose from one of those 6 films and decide which one was the worst of the phase. With that said, based on tournament seeding, which if you will remember was based on where you finished in our prediction competition from last year's tournament, Jake, you did do very well in the prediction contest, which means you seeded 2nd and thus were given the favorite spot tonight. You chose to go first on questions 1 and 3. Alec, you will go first on 2 and 4. So as I bring the timer in for you, Jake, it'll begin ticking when you are ready.
I will simply state that I went with Avengers Age of Ultron, and I will save the argument part for the 2 minutes, so I will yield my time.
All right, that's the simplest use of an opening minute. We have Avengers Age of Ultron on the table. Alec, you have 1 minute on the clock and you begin speaking.
I picked a movie that is a sequel from a Phase 1 film that, it was okay. It's typical. It was a typical origin movie. On the second one, they got a really great actor to play the villain. They had basically the entire cast return. Had a new director, had some falling outs with the previous director, and it led to the trash fire that was Thor: The Dark World. We will get into why it is Thor: The Dark World, why it is the worst film in almost the entire MCU, but we will get to that whenever it is my turn, so we will yield my time.
I was muted. Go ahead. We're going to move on to the 2-minute portion. Avengers Age of Ultron versus Thor: The Dark World. Jake, you are back up with 2 minutes on the clock. Time starts when you begin speaking.
In the grand scheme of things, Dark World is better than Age of Ultron. Okay, so Age of Ultron. Okay, Avengers is awesome. Age of Ultron, sharp drop. Thor is meh. Dark World, slight drop. So expectations less crashed. Age of Ultron is just like there's nothing to Age of Ultron. It's piss poor pacing. The pacing is just garbage in that flick. Even Hulkbuster, which is some of the shit we wanted to see forever, doesn't save Age of Ultron. Dark World gave us some really good, awesome stuff. Okay, so in the future, fucking Endgame saves Dark World with the scene between Thor and Frigga and eat a salad and all that jazz. That scene's fantastic. But in the movie itself, Dark World ditched the weird Dutch angles that Thor had. Frigga visiting Loki is a fantastic scene. There's a ton of complexity. It's the first time we see Loki really care for his family. And then after Frigga dies, and Loki lets down the illusion and his cell is completely destroyed in grief. And that's the first time we get to see Loki and Thor kind of really be Loki and Thor. I'll cede.
All right, Alec, 2 minutes on the clock when you're ready.
What you say about Thor: The Dark World leading towards something later on in the phases, I will actually use that for my argument for why Age of Ultron is not nearly as bad as Thor: The Dark World. Age of Ultron basically sets up Tony Stark's arc leading in, going forward. He creates Ultron. What happens with Sokovia leading into Captain America Civil War, eventually Infinity War, and an Endgame that finally closes. That is the second stage of Tony Stark's arc. Thor: The Dark World does almost nothing for the character of Thor besides the character. I mean, besides the relationship building between him and Loki, and that won't be paid off until Thor Ragnarok. So you get a bunch of really good scenes in you get some cool stuff in Thor and Thor: The Dark World. You get obviously the Loki scenes. Him and Frigga, are amazing. But that's all you get, and that's not even paid off until the Loki series, really, as well. What you get with Avengers Infinity War, you get Vision is introduced. You have Wanda and Pietro both being introduced, and you get James Spader as Ultron. Yeah, sure, he's not the greatest of villains, but anytime you can get James Spader's voice on anything, it is a win in my book. In Thor: The Dark World, the other thing they only really introduced is the Reality Stone. This movie was so bad the chemistry between Natalie Portman and Chris Hemsworth was so bad that they basically got rid of her for an entire movie for Thor Ragnarok and said, yeah, we're good, we don't need you, and basically waited until now, which Thor Love and Thunder, to bring her back and really redeem her. So I will see the rest of my time.
All right, and that is time. All right, guys, we have a 4-minute open discussion coming up. Whenever the first competitor speaks is when the timer will start. As always, obviously get as many points in as you can, but be respectful of each other's speaking time. Don't cut each other off too much, but have fun with it. And Alec, are you good to go, or do you need a second for your dog?
We're good. Sorry about that. She's a puppy.
All good, man. All right, then when you are ready, first person speaks, timer will start.
I'll just start by saying, like, the whole Natalie thing is that Natalie didn't want to be there in that moment, so I don't think that's like a character issue thing that can be discussed. And then the second thing I have is I love James Spader, man. He's the effing Lizard King. He should be awesome in that flick, and he really isn't.
Well, with Natalie Portman, yes, there were problems behind the scenes, but even in Thor 1, her chemistry and with Chris Hemsworth just wasn't realized. Not even until Thor: Love and Thunder. We won't go into that because I don't know who hasn't seen it, but like the chemistry is way better in the chemistry in Thor 1 and especially in Thor: The Dark World. It is almost non-existent. It's like a ice storm between those two. There's no heat, there's no passion, there's no fire. In Thor: The Dark World, you wasted my favorite Doctor in Christopher Eccleston. Completely wasted him on this character Malekith, who in the comics is much more than just a throwaway character, who has moments in the comics of being really dark and really fleshed out, and here is just a placeholder of a villain. So they can introduce the Reality Stone, which isn't even known to be the Reality Stone until later on down the line. So in the time when you're watching it, you have no connection to these characters to this plot at all, except to see Loki, and it's not even a Loki movie; it's a Thor movie.
I agree. Loki is fantastic. Age of Ultron is just so discombobulated. There's nothing I'm just struck. Like, I remember Hulkbuster and I remember Hawkeye talking to Wanda. But yeah, it's just it's not memorable, and neither of these movies are super memorable. Obviously, we picked them for a reason, but it's just for me, I just remember slightly more about Dark World than about Age of Ultron. So I just think, like I said, in the grand scheme of things, I think Dark World is just a pinch better than Age of Ultron.
Yeah, we're comparing turds here. Let's be honest. We're comparing turds. Which ones is the bigger turd? And when I think of that, I will come to moments that I can remember. And the moments that I remember in Age of Ultron is, and I was arguing this, even though the movie was trash, it was not good. From the very beginning, I was arguing to people they are setting up Wanda. They're setting up how powerful she is. There is a real emotional scene after Pietro gets killed. He shouldn't have been killed. Should have at least given him one more movie. But you get to see the power that she has, and it's leading into where it leads to. You can see there's a little connection between Vision and Wanda. Again, setting up later storylines. And if you know the comics, you're yes. And if you don't know the comics, you're oh, that's weird, but we'll keep an eye on that. You get some funny lines. You get the scene where they're trying to pick up Mjolnir. There's a lot of really memorable scenes, whereas in Thor: The Dark World, the only memorable scene that I can think of is the scene with Loki in the prison after Frigga's death. You get that god-awful fight where it's trying to go through different dimensions or whatever. I don't even know. I can't even tell you what it was anymore because it was that bad, and I will do my best to stay away from that movie as much as I can. I can put on Age of Ultron and have some big dumb fun sometimes.
Yeah, the scene where they're trying to pick up Mjolnir, I believe you mean they're trying to pick up Meow Meow.
Yes, Meow Meow. But, all right.
And time. All right, so you guys each have 1 minute left to close out the round. Jake, we start with you. Time starts when you begin speaking.
Again, just a recap. In the grand scheme, Dark World better. I think the redemption, like we got redemption for both of these movies in future movies. I think Dark World's redemption was better. So I think overall Dark World's arc was like, yeah, whereas Age of Ultron's more of a schmeh. I don't know how much of that got on cam, but like I think Dark World ended up higher. It just in the all-time thing. Spader, Spader versus Eccleston, meh. But yeah, just the pacing. Hulkbuster sucks. I just the scenes between Frigga and Loki and Thor and Loki and the Dark World ultimately are better than the scenes between anyone else in Age of Ultron.
And time. All right, and so we're going to go over to Alec for the final minute of the round when you begin speaking.
When it comes to finding out which movie is the worst, when you're comparing two turds to each other, I'm always going to go back to which has the more memorable scenes, which has the better relationships. And in Avengers Age of Ultron, you get the returning Avengers coming back, the introduction of new characters like Wanda and Pietro, and their relationships with each other. And then in Thor: The Dark World, I can't tell you for the life of me how that movie ends because it's not memorable at all. There's no memorable scenes except the Frigga scene, and everything in this movie depends on Loki. This movie is called Thor, and there's absolutely almost no memorable scenes with Thor, unless it's involving Loki. Avengers: Age of Ultron, you get in all the Avengers, you get to see them actually interacting and having fun with each other before everything hits the fan. But you get to see those cool scenes and see those actors, their chemistry completely come together. In Thor: The Dark World, obviously there's almost zero chemistry. If your name is not Tom Hiddleston, you have zero chemistry with anybody else.
Time. All right, guys, a solid enough first round. I'm going to go ahead and sit you both in the back and bring in our judges for the decision. So I have two quick fact checks here. So the first is related to the death of Pietro Maximoff, as to basically why did it happen. Originally, Joss Whedon attempted to claim that the killing of Pietro was for story reasons and that it subverted expectations of what the audience thought the character would be. However, it later came out that they actually shot two versions of the ending of the film, one in which he lived and one in which he died. So that's clearly not 100% the reason. It's later since been believed that it was actually a contractual thing. At that point, Fox's X-Men Days of Future Past and Avengers Age of Ultron were shooting at basically the exact same time. So both studios used the character and neither were 100% aware of what the other was doing. When it came to light that both studios had used the character, there was apparently a deal put in place that said that if Marvel agreed to kill off Pietro in Age of Ultron, Fox would not touch Wanda in their film so that Marvel could use her and Fox could continue to use Evan Peters as Quicksilver. The second is related to Natalie Portman. Again, it was kind of questioned as to why she didn't return. Again, similarly with disputes of things like this, there's no 100% factual reason. However, it is known that apparently Portman wanted out of the Thor franchise even before Thor: The Dark World. She was upset at the fact that the original director of Thor: The Dark World, Patty Jenkins, had been removed from the film due to creative disputes between her and Kevin Feige. Portman did not want to shoot that movie, although she showed up simply out of contractual obligation. Following the production of the film, it was believed that her and Feige made an agreement that she wouldn't be called to film anything should the role not be substantial enough, and thus her cameo roles in Thor Ragnarok and Avengers Age of Ultron were both cut from the script. And that's why she did not appear for a number of years. This is similar to deals they've made in the past. For example, despite the fact that Hugo Weaving still has a contract with Marvel, they instead have used Ross Marquand to portray the character in further appearances because Hugo Weaving was very publicly unhappy with that playing in the makeup. So that's why he did not come back. So with that said, despite the fact that Papa is on top, that's just because he has admin access. We're going to start with Sean first. Who gets your vote, and what was your main selling point?
I lean towards Alex for starters because at one point in the argument, Tato basically conceded to him that his points were correct. And additionally, because his point about the amount of memorable scenes that you wind up getting from Ultron as opposed to Dark World, that kind of sold it for me. Tato had a few good points though about the relationship building, which I thought were actually pretty good points, and actually kind of made me lean a little bit towards him at a certain point. But yeah, for right now, I gotta definitely give Alec. Sorry.
All right, so Alec gets the first vote. Chris, I go down to you. Who gets your vote and what sold you?
Yeah, Alex, well, he just pointed out more perhaps I sort of Dark World didn't work. He brought up a couple memorable scenes about Ultron that kind of went against Tito in the argument. Tito kind of defeated a few times into the argument that hurt him a little bit. And he kind of had everything. The villain saying everything, and I think that what won me in the end. I am more for Alex than Tito.
All right, guys, thank you so much. Papa, we will hear the smooth, soothing tones of your voice next round. I will go ahead and sit you guys in the back as we bring back in the competitors and move on to question number 2. Now, I'd like to come up with some sort of fantastical reason as to why this question exists, like I usually do. But I'm just going to be honest here. This is the first match in nearly 100 matches that we've recorded since returning last year, in which both competitors, without each other's knowledge, submitted the same strength privately to me. And after legitimately taking a few minutes to think about how I wanted to handle that, I said, fuck it, I'll give them 2 Marvel questions. So we have 2 MCU questions, and I figured if we're talking about the different phases of films, what's another big thing that we're focused on? And that is Fantastic Four. Now, previously it was reported that Spider-Man helmer John Watts would be directing the film. He was announced as a part of it when it was announced initially. However, he has since chosen to drop off of the project to focus on his Star Wars television series. Let's see how that one works out. But so we need a new director. So the question on hand here is, ahead of purportedly the announcement coming at D23 as to who is directing this film, who should direct the MCU reboot of the Fantastic Four? That is the question at hand here. The competitors have submitted their answers, and Alec, you are up first, sir. So I'll bring the timer back in for you, and it will start ticking when you begin speaking.
Fantastic Four might be tricky when it comes to the MCU. It seems like no one has been able to get it right. Tim Story, went the classical comic booky, campy route, and they were not good. And then Josh Trank tried the more serious route and completely botched it because I don't think he knew what the project the project that he had in. I don't think he knew the source material. So I went with someone who is a little bit fresher because we don't see him make a lot of live action movies, but has also made a very similar type movie, and that is Brad Bird. He basically made a kid version of the Fantastic Four with the Incredibles and the Incredibles 2, which I think are both fantastic. I would love to see him get a shot at directing a live action one. His last foray into live action didn't hit as well, but I think with something that he knows well enough, I think he could do a great job.
And time. All right, Tato, back over to you for 1 minute.
I went with okay, so we're talking about the Fantastic Four, and you know who directs fantastic movies in the realm of fantasticalness? Taika Waititi. I think he would be the correct person to do the Fantastic Four, and I realize we're all MCU jumping shit, but maybe we can do that. It's not, there are comic book artists who have done great Spider-Mans and then done great Fantastic Fours and and writers and stuff. So in the realm of comics, there are people who can handle characters great. We can do that in the realm of movies now too, especially with the way the MCU has exploded. So I'm going to go with Taika on this one. Time.
All right, and that will be time for Jake. All right, give me just 1 second, guys. All right, I'm going to sit you guys in the back for just 1 moment. All right, So to the three judges, I tried sending it in the private chat, but it was a little too late because I forgot to ask before we started. Have all three of you seen Thor: Love and Thunder? Okay, you have. Chris, have you?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes, and Jacob has. Okay, cool.
Damn.
Have you seen it?
Yes, I have, but that's why I'm like saying damn. I gotta argue
Right.
another movie.
All right, so 5, 4, 3, 2. All right, guys, so we're going to go ahead and move on to the 2-minute round. Now, I'm going to issue a potential spoiler warning for everyone watching at home. Even though at this point the movie's been out a little over a month, if you have not seen Thor: Love and Thunder, everyone here currently on the recording has, so permission has been given for the competitors to speak about it. Again, I don't have detailed notes on what they plan on saying, so anything could potentially come up or nothing could come up. So with that said, you guys have been warned. Alec, back over to you when you're ready for 2 minutes.
So like I said before, the key to making a good Fantastic Four film is about finding that balance between comic booky and kind of the gritty, the live action, kind of what the MCU is trying to do sometimes, not all the time, sometimes. Sometimes they struggle to find that healthy middle. And I think Brad Bird could do a good job of that. I think he can get the family relationship with and have those family moments like he had with Mr. Incredible and Elastigirl in The Incredibles. Have those moments with a Reed Richards and a Sue Storm while I fight this dog. And you could have those family moments while also having making it feel fantastical, making it feel bright and colored and full of joy, unlike that Josh Trank one that was full of not joy. It was full of the opposite of it. With Taika Waititi, as we saw with Thor: Love and Thunder, he can miss sometimes when it comes to trying to get that healthy middle. He sometimes with Thor Ragnarok, he was able to find that. With Thor: Love and Thunder, he was not. And this is a character this is his second go round with this character. So I would be afraid to give him 4 characters that he has to make the centerpiece of this film, because in Thor: Love and Thunder, he tried that. And sometimes things got a little, just kind of all over the place sometimes. With Brad Bird, he did 2 successful Incredible movies. Yes, the first one is better than the second one, but I still think the second one is still a great movie. And to see him be able to bring those ideals to live action MCU with a little bit more, maybe a little bit of direction from Kevin Feige, I think would be way better than what Waititi could do, which we've already seen what he could do in the MCU.
And time. All right, Jake, back over to you, sir. 2 minutes on the clock.
Alrighty. So you talk about 4 characters, but there's got to be more than 4 characters in the Fantastic Four. So let's talk about Doctor Doom for a minute. I like Love and Thunder, but for everyone's complaints, everyone seems to love Gore. So, and Gore is a solid villain, Christian Bale. So he could easily do Doctor Doom as well. And speaking of Doctor Doom and Taika Waititi, let's talk about another Taika Waititi film, Jojo Rabbit. He took Hitler, who's a very bad person, I want to state on record. No one likes him. No one should like him. He took Hitler and made him hilarious. Now, I'm not saying Doctor Doom needs to be hilarious, but I'm saying he can do whatever he wants. He could, because Doctor Doom is kind of a Hitler-esque figure. So he could do whatever, he could turn it all the way on with Gore, or he could go funny with, I don't think he would go funny with, the funny Hitler thing, but I'm saying the man knows how to do villains across the scope. The family thing that you noted about the Incredibles, like I agree, Incredibles is great, but I don't want to see it. I don't want to see the same movie again in live action. We've already seen it. I would rather see Taika's new take on the Fantastic Four than just have the Fantastic Four be Incredibles again. Done.
All right, so we're going to go ahead and go into the 4-minute open round. The timer will start when the first competitor speaks.
So with Taika Waititi, when it comes to villains, yes, he had a good villain in Gore. He also had a great actor in Christian Bale, something that he could work with. And yeah, I agree, he was a great villain. But Brad Bird was able to bring a great villain into The Incredibles, and a decent villain in Incredibles too. Syndrome is top tier animated villains. He might be up there. You could probably put him on a list for
Jason Lee's a great actor too.
Absolutely, and you're right. But what he does with Syndrome, he could do with Doctor Doom, even with Catherine Keener's character in Incredibles 2. I'll be honest, I thought it was going to be Bob Odenkirk was going to be the villain. I didn't know Catherine Keener was going to be the little bait and switch. That's a little bit of writing right there for you. What Brad Bird brings is a little bit something different to the MCU. I love Taika Waititi. Taika Waititi is great. I don't want to see him directing another superhero film in the MCU. That's not Thor, really. Like I just want to see. I would rather somebody else, someone fresh, come into this brand new property that's going to be brought into the MCU, which I think is going to have a huge part in what they're going to do going forward. And Brad Bird should get a chance at that. Tomorrowland was a trash movie, but that was not his fault. That was just a bad concept. I don't know what they were thinking. Hey, let's make a movie based off of an entire section of a theme park.
Yeah, I don't think this is the correct flick for Brad Bird to return to live action on. And here's my line on that. With how great Spider-Verse is, I believe down the line we will eventually start seeing theatrically released MCU animated movies. And that's where I would want to see Brad Bird shine in the MCU. And this is 2026, 2027. I'm thinking way future talk. But yeah, I just think Taika would do better. And I can't help but think that, I just can't help but feel like Fantastic Four would be a mishmash of Mission Impossible 4 and The Incredibles. It's just, I don't know.
Well, what Brad Bird would bring to the MCU is something I think that the maybe for some people in this last phase have maybe been missing, which is some of that heart. And I think Brad Bird would be able to bring that heart to the Fantastic Four, because we didn't get any heart in the first Fantastic Four films. The fact that he made me fall in love with a rat in Ratatouille, the fact that he can have that scene even amongst the all the action that's going on in The Incredibles, have such a little small character moment that tells you everything you need to know about Bob Parr in that scene where he tells Elastigirl, "I can't lose you again." He got more heart and more emotion out of that than I think anyone has done in any Fantastic Four film, and at least maybe even in this past phase. This phase has been missing some heart. Taika is now included in that for missing heart, because I don't think that Thor: Love and Thunder had the heart that we wanted. He had the jokes, he had the laughs, he had the action, but didn't have the heart, and Brad Bird could bring that to the Fantastic Four.
That's what I agree with you on the Ratatouille bit. That's why I would rather see him do a character like Squirrel Girl. I would rather see him do something completely new. And obviously, completely new. We've had Fantastic Four before, and not in the MCU, but even outside of the MCU, Fantastic Four is a known entity, whereas something like Squirrel Girl is not. I want to see him do something more unique than Fantastic Four.
And time. All right, you guys have 1 minute left on the clock each. Alec, I go back over to you. When time starts, you can begin speaking.
in phase 3 of the MCU, there was a lot of heart, there was a lot of emotion. We felt a lot of things for a lot of characters, and it was torn apart and it ripped our hearts out at times. And I think that when you see the criticism that you're getting for for phase 4 of the MCU, that's missing. We're not getting that. Black Widow is a bunch of craziness. Thor: Love and Thunder, all jokes. There hasn't been heart, and I think that Brad Bird, having done his work with Pixar, having done his work with The Incredibles, especially, to be able to show you what he could do with a team, a super powered family, and be able to not make it hollow, make you feel something at the same time. I think it would be something that would feel really refreshing for the MCU. Taika Waititi, we know what he can do. We know he's a great director, but other than Thor, I don't necessarily think that we need to see more of what he's doing, especially with the way that Thor: Love and Thunder was received. I don't think it would bring anything new to the MCU, and that's what we need with the Fantastic Four, something new.
And time. All right, and we're going to go over to Jake for the final minute of the round.
Alrighty. Yeah, so I'm not trying to hear the internet bitch about Incredibles versus Brad Bird's Fantastic Four on one part. Excuse me. The only thing we need to look at from Love and Thunder is gore. And can Taika take what he did with Gore and do it with Doctor Doom? And I think he can. Like I said, Taika, great with villains, especially villains of that nature, like the villains that want to take over everything. I mean, that's kind of a common villainous quality, but what have you. Like I said, I think eventually we'll get theatrical animated MCU. That's where I want to see Brad Bird. Ultimately, it comes down to we have already seen Brad Bird's Fantastic Four. It's good. I don't need to see it again. I would rather see Taika's take.
And time. All right. That is going to be that on the round, guys. I'm going to go ahead and sit you both in the back and bring our judges on screen. So the only real fact check that was brought up was in relation to Josh Trank's Fantastic Four and kind of what happened there. And there's a big misnomer with that movie because it's been very publicly spoken about the fact that what we saw in that film wasn't really anyone's vision for what was involved. It was just kind of this really weird after effect of all the production issues with that movie. The original script that was used as the shooting script has been described by both Trank and Jeremy Slater, who co-wrote it with him, as essentially Fantastic Four meets David Cronenberg, and they were doing a slightly more body horror-ish element with the film. The horror in it has been somewhat comparable to the horror we saw in New Mutants, that type of, it's still PG-13, it's still for everyone, but it's got that darker element to it. However, at some point in the post-production, Fox really, really vehemently backed off of this idea. They forced the film to undergo reshoots, which Trank was contractually obligated to direct himself, where a lot of footage was put in. Famously, if you watch the movie, Kate Mara's hair changes color depending on the scene that she's in because she was forced to wear a wig after cutting her hair. It's also worth noting that any time the name Victor Von Doom is said, it's said by a character off screen because the character's original name was Victor Domashev, and they changed that during the reshoot so that the name had to be ADR'd in to the film. So yeah, that movie is a real nightmare of a mess, although a fun story if you want to look it up and try and read it. With that said, though, Chris, I'm going to go to you first. Who gets your vote, and what was the main selling point?
Honestly, similar to that round, I thought Alex won again. I think while Tato had a good intention, he just focused too much on Doom and the villain aspect when he could have focused on like the fantastical element. Well, I think Alex just gave a better example using the pistol level using some Brad Bird pass for it. To say how Brad Bird to bring into the Fantastic Four, not just for the villain, but for the Fantastic Four themselves. Like it was close. Like both are great choices. I love both of these choices, but Alex won it.
Okay, so Alec gets first vote. Papa, up to you. Who gets your vote, and what was the main selling point?
Papa's always on top, by the way. I'm also giving it to Alec. Bring back the heart in the MCU.
All right. That was short and sweet right there. Thank you, Papa. And your winner by a final knockout score of 3-0, it is Alec Sinister Miller getting. Sorry, there was no creative or inventive way for me to do a smoother cut there than just a very obvious jump cut. I want to thank everybody who's still with us to the end of this match for tuning in and enjoying the debates. As I kind of hinted at earlier, I'd made a decision to remove the post-game interviews from this edit as well. Anyone who has recorded a Battleground match in the past knows that there's often a discussion between the physical end of the game and then when we record the post interviews. While many of my other hosts question what I actually do during those periods, I'm often inputting stats and updating rosters just so I don't accidentally forget after the fact. I promise I'm not just sitting there doing nothing. But you guys often know that there's a period of time if you guys record. During the recording of this match, there was, I would say, an incredible discussion had where I hope the feeling was that everyone who left that match felt better about the situation, but there was definitely a cloud that was sort of left in the air going into the post interviews. And so for the betterment of everyone, I've made a decision not to air them. However, that is it for our match tonight. So I do want to appreciate you if you're still around here watching. I do want to say congratulations to Alec Miller on the win. For the sake of stats, for people in case people let me start that sentence over. For the sake of stats, because he did win both rounds of which were played, and he was conceded the victory by Jake, Alec will be awarded a knockout to his record. This is something that Jake himself supported, and it was discussed before the decision was made official. I do want to say congratulations to Alec for moving on and putting up a good fight tonight. For those of you who want to see a little more of him in action, given the rough house of tonight's match, he will be back next week for the next round of the tournament next Saturday, taking on Amaru Moses in the first of our semifinals. And once again, I do want to wish the best to Jake Riese, and I look forward to his return as a player, because while he may not bring the wins every time, given his record, unfortunately, he does bring the entertainment, and he's just an all-around class guy who I love having. So, Jake, I hope you're doing good, buddy, and I look forward to having you back. With that said, have a great night, everyone. If this is your first time watching, I promise they're not all this cut up. Please be sure to subscribe, rate the channel, and stick around for more great Battleground matches every week. And be sure to tune in tomorrow because we have a Marvel exhibition match coming your way. See ya.